This podcast is brought to you by Pragmatic Play, a leading game developer providing player favorites to the most successful brands across the industry. With an award-winning multi-product portfolio of slots, live casino, bingo, virtual sports, and more, Pragmatic Play is powering up new possibilities of play through one single API. Visit pragmaticplay.com and discover your favorite every time.
Welcome, Jenny Ramstedt, to our show. You are not only a sales manager at Wiraya, you're also a personal friend, and that's why I have you here today, so that we can talk about life in Malta, and specifically, when you come to Malta, what has changed in terms of making a career, if that's what you're after. How do you become successful? How are you?
Very, very nice. Hey, and it's very nice to see you as well. I always think about, you always think about the 10 years and like when did we meet, when did our lives change, and we sort of followed our journey as well. That's why it's such a nice topic as well, because you think about how did we stumble around in this world about 10 years ago and now become the excellent creatures that we are today. But still how you see that happening and how you see it happening for some other people now as well that are new to moving somewhere maybe from home and trying to get a career and build it. And the difference as well, I think a lot of the people that are young, they're so much more serious than I was. They really want to make a career from the start.
Exactly, the expectations might have changed.
I don't know how you were. What did you think moving into the industry? Did you have like a plan that, okay, this is something I might be good at? Or
I think you're more analytical in that sense. When I first came into the industry, Gibraltar, I was going to be an interpreter. I didn't even know what gaming was, to be honest. Hampus, my partner, he is much more aware of these things. Like he moved down for the industry to work with poker. I sort of, bananas skid myself in with a friend and sort of liked it. I liked the lifestyle. I liked the speed of things and sort of the progression of a very fast career, which has very much positive sides to it, but also, you've been through a lot, but if you're going to sit down and sort of reflect about everything that you've been through, it's sort of, oh shit, yes, that happened, but I never had time to sort of consider it. And then there was also families and children on top of this. And that's how we met at the ballet school with kids 6 years ago, something like that. But the fun thing with Malta, and this is how I take it as well today, is that since it's the industry bringing in a lot of expats, it's an expat way of living. So you integrate people that you spend time with, you also work with somehow or the other. And you and I, we've been talking both privately as family members, mothers, friends, but also workers. And I think like you and Hampus worked for X amount of years as well together at the same company. And so everything is sort of integrating. When it comes to moving down to Malta, expectations now. Back in the days, you started an entry-level job. You came in as a customer support because you have a language that is needed. If you have a skill, you might, you have a tendency to move towards marketing, towards payment fraud, move within. You quickly get promoted, if that's what you want. And then, you stay for a few months or years in the same position. And in our days, I'm talking 10 years ago, everything weren't that fast as it is today. Now it's much more the employee, the demands that goes, if I'm not promoted, I can quickly go to another job and there will be jobs and you get another title. So everything's like roller coasting itself into the speed that, it's hard to handle. It's hard to handle. How does this affect people's expectations moving down to Malta, you think?
I think that means that a lot of people can take the time that they need or want to just be happy getting into the industry and trying to understand it. That would be a temptation. And it's a good idea to remember as well that most of these recruitment agencies, I mean, they do make money from moving you, and they are salespeople. So, I mean, they call and they sell you like, oh, been staying a bit too long at Betsson or Kindred and maybe a different opportunity. And you have to remember that they actually get money for selling you. So maybe it's a good idea to think about what you want. But still, it's nice that there are a lot of opportunities, because I think when we started, there were things you can do, but you sort of have to, there weren't as many tools or other things, and there weren't as many markets. There were a lot of roles that didn't exist. So now you have more to choose from and more ways of seeing how you can develop yourself as well. But before, it might be that you would do a lot of things, but there wasn't any title for it, or there wasn't any knowledge to get you there either. So I think there are in some ways more opportunities, but then again, for people that want to build and be entrepreneurial, there might have been some more opportunities before. That part is a little bit difficult to see, but I would say that's what I think about.
Which path should you take if you want to be successful? If we see success as a traditional, you get a higher title, higher promotion, more money, if that's the way that we see career today, what's the best path?
I think that's an important part that took me a lot of time to figure out. But in gaming, you really should find and keep your eye on where is the money, where are the money being made. And it might sound a bit too opportunistic, but you should really try and follow that. So if you work in casino, if you work in certain markets that are making money, that's going to make things easier. But it's not only markets, it's also roles, that you shouldn't stay on roles where you see that this is not the focus for the company, because this is simply not bringing in money. And why is that? Because this is still a business that changes all the time. So if you're not following the money, you will sort of end up being left behind. But if you do, you have a nice path to take us over. That's what I think about. It's a good advice. If you want to, I'm not saying climb faster because it doesn't sound that nice, but if you want to understand the business as well, this is what you should do. Figure out what's working and what's not working.
Do you know what comes to me now? And I am 100% sure that the word compliance will come up later on. But I'm also thinking in terms of recruitment, the regulation around recruitment has changed. It's much more sort of giving everyone a chance. Again, in our time, it might have been, I know that person, let's take that person in. So it's based on personal references. This might happen still today, obviously, but networking has been a very big deal, making people move upwards along the ladder. I'm thinking after works and these kind of networking.
Yeah.
How is this? Is this the same?
How is this? I think it is still the same, but also nowadays it's not one type of person, because when we were young, I don't know if we never saw this, but when we first showed up in Malta, it was more like going out to dinners, going out to parties, and what you do at that stage. But it's not only that, but now it's more, you see paddle tournaments, people take you to salsa in the park, and you network in different ways like that. You network obviously at the ballet school or even at the school ground, but you have more meeting points. But I think networking is equally important, but there's a bigger diversity of the people working in the industry, which also means that there are diverse ways of meeting them as well. So I think that is a difference, but I still think that if you network by going out and meeting people, it's the same way. And it might not be that you're offered the job on the spot in a Nordic bar at night, but on the other hand, you get to understand and know what's going on. And you hear that, okay, this brand is hiring now, or they opened a new office, or that's a really nice place to work. All of that still is the same discussion even amongst us. With families and everything, we also discuss what's a good place to work and who's hiring at the moment. And we do discuss gaming, even though we try and keep off the work topic sometimes. It's something that we always talk about.
So what you're saying is basically there are much more opportunities than just hanging out at Black Gold after work.
Yeah, which is nice. I think we create those as well. Growing up in the industry, it's like, okay, so there has to be something more, but it's also, that was what Malta had to offer 10 years ago. Now there's more. I mean, maybe there was the golf course. I don't play golf, but that's a very important.
Exactly, it's sort of maturated.
I would say paddle, for example, is an emerging networking zone as well. I think everyone now is like, you play paddle? Like, really, I don't think we would be friends if we
Come from
tried.
friends that don't play paddle. I wonder what media and like social media has actually affected this. Like, do I really want to be seen at Nordic Bar, Black Gold, very late at night with, I don't know, with these people, but in this surrounding if I'm going to apply for this specific job? So that might be something that we need to think about, you and I. We can talk about that. What about integrity? Like, yeah.
I think that, that's a very... thinking about integrity, I think it's something that we haven't spoken about this, you and me, but I think it's something that is very important, especially if you have your family and you work and you tend to meet colleagues all the time. It is good even when you are getting started in this business to remember that you should be your polite and reserved self, so that you're not giving too much of yourself all the time. And you should be quite careful as well. This is a small industry, people know each other, and if you haven't really figured it out, you should be a bit careful, because everyone is married to someone, and they also know each other, and they come from different backgrounds and relationship. But you should of course you should always be polite regardless of knowing that, but it's even more important in this industry, which can also be an industry where you can be a bit, I wouldn't say you can be used, but if you go and represent your company at events all the time, maybe you're working too much as well, but also you're representing a brand and you're representing them. So you really have to think about what you want for yourself and what you think is a good limit for what you want to give to the company, but also the values you have and what is a currency. I don't know if you agree there, but a currency in this business is what you know. You can work in CS and know a lot of things have a lot of knowledge about the business, but that knowledge, you can't throw it around. You can't create a WhatsApp group and share a lot of this information easily with other people. You have to still be respectful to the people that you work for and also the people around you.
What's the currency? And that's your knowledge. Like when to give out, when to sort of keep to yourself. It hasn't been the kindest industry, if we're going to be very brutally honest. If you share your knowledge, it might be very much abused by others as well.
So that's something you have to think about. And I guess it's also because it is a small island, that if you were working, you wouldn't get the opportunity, so people wouldn't ask you certain questions because they wouldn't even know how to ask. But that is something to be a little bit careful about, and remember that this is not something that you should do. But also the way that as long as you think it's fun to go on all kinds of networking events and enjoy that, that's a good thing. But it can also be a bit of, you can have a lot of pressure sometimes to be everywhere as well. And that's, of course, your own personal time. So that's also something to be good, to be mindful about.
What do you think has changed the least in 10 years?
I say the opportunities and the fact that things keep growing. And it's still, even though, of course, 10 years ago, there were a lot of things that hadn't happened yet, but I still think that there's a lot of things that hasn't happened in this industry yet. And sometimes you're surprised as well. There's still so much to innovate in. And I'm not talking about let's create new casino products, but I'm talking about the fact that you still maybe do your reports in Excel and then transfer that into something else. There's a lot of things that can happen to make the companies work better and more efficiently. And there are a lot of things that can happen on those things. So in that sense, it's still so many opportunities because things are changing. And if you have ideas, you have a good chance to be able to do what you want with them.
If I turn the question entirely the other way around, what do you according to you, what has changed the most? Moving down to Malta, making
the change is definitely you can't think about anything other than compliance and the way that the European Union and all our different companies have, like governments are looking at Malta, and that has an effect on everything. It even has an effect. I don't know if you remember the SATA Bank crisis, but with governments looking here, it's about compliance and trying to get that right. And then Malta had its issues with banking. Let's not get into detail because either you know it or it takes too long to learn. But the fact that that actually affects everyday life, because you might have issues getting a bank account if you work in gaming. So it affects everything. It's a small island. So those parts definitely change. And also all the roles. So now when you look at a company, like, so who are these people? And it's a whole army of people sitting in the compliance team. If you walk past in a gaming room, I don't remember that happening in 2013. Then it was more like casino brands, but there wasn't a whole floor for
It was an
compliance
outsourced
and everyone
lawyer.
hired to do that. Yes, exactly. So I mean, that's a very big difference. And also, I would say that way, that there are people coming from the outside the industry that enter compliance, because it's a whole different setup of people. They're definitely not following the money in that sense. They're making sure that the money stays in the company, but it's not about the business side at all. And I would say now, come to think about it, on the positive end for you, there are more people working with staff and HR and these support functions, because I also remember in HR was also like, oh, that's I think maybe the owner's wife that's doing something on
Exactly. Maybe
Mondays.
she does
It was
payroll
more how you solve the HR.
on
Yeah.
Mondays.
So yeah, that's a very different story as well. So I mean, that's a nice thing, but that's the amount of how the roles that you have there and how many people work with it is so different.
Exactly. Can we please have fruit in the office, to, insurance, to everything? Free, basically, you can live at the office.
Exactly.
I'm also banking. I'm also thinking like Malta is very, very fast in terms of adapting. Revolut, you have Bolt, you order food. Okay,
Yes.
fast, it's 10 years, but still, whatever, like oftentimes I go to Malta, there are services in Malta that I don't have here. Now I live on a remote island, but still, Malta's way of seeing things is where the money goes, and all the new services are definitely being used and makes life very much easier for the people that move down. You don't have to go with the white caps and the black gold. They're actually very fine dining and nice ways of getting there as well. So while you're making a career in Malta, life is actually also easier in terms of your personal logistics around it. Is that our conclusion, or am I missing something?
I think definitely so, especially if you're not just in your. I think one thing that is different on the negative side is the prices of where you live as well, because that is on the negative side. But if you look on the other side, I mean, even things like if you're not the typical iGaming worker 25 just supporting yourself, it's so much easier, because I remember all the challenges we had with nurseries in the beginning, and now it's so easy. It's much more catered for working parents. That's one aspect. And then it's easier because, yeah, people are used to foreigners renting houses. You can get the Revolut account up and running. You can really be here and be a guest, and you can still meet people very easily, get a network, and get an understanding for that. I mean, I don't know what you think, but I've lived in other countries as well, and Malta is still an exceptionally easy place to land and get started, and still you have English for everything, and you still have opportunities to buy your own property in 1 or 2 years if you would want to. There's still, you can get a life here.
Agreed. If you plan to stay or if you plan to leave, however your life pans out. Are we missing something very important now? Or is that something that we will think about afterwards, and then we continue this discussion in a later session?
Yes, it's no. I think we have it. I always want to ask you a lot more questions always when we meet. So now I want to know, because there are some as well that had, their career has been like this, and you and I, we're more a bit like sailing through the exit. So you can do both. We can mention that as well. That's it still works out. You will get somewhere in the end. Somewhere.
As long as you live at the same time. Right? It's like renovating the house, like we do and we have done for all the years since we got it here. Renovate, build your career, but live at the same time. Don't miss those opportunities. Jenny, amazing to have met you this morning. Speak soon.
Yes.
Ciao, ciao.